I'm Brian Noel. I'm in a garage, obviously. I'm in a garage because I'm also a husband, a father, and an aspiring serial entrepreneur. It's late, my family's asleep, and I wanted to show you the garage before we get rid of this stuff, take it to Goodwill, and turn this area into a little studio. I'm really excited to share with you the 4th interview with Jack Fussell. If you're just coming in, go back and watch the last 3. This episode is about the aspiring entrepreneur's defining moment. You're still early in your journey in figuring out how to translate these ideas. There's a couple of things you said. I have a million ideas, but I look for patterns and insights to know which ones. And now that you're 5 years in Copenhagen, you've got new voices, new influences. Now you're coming up into a stage in your life where you're really starting to find the trends and develop that into your next move. That's a pretty exciting place to be.
A little scary.
A little scary. So a lot of times we hear about people after they've made the move, right? Oh, I remember doing that and I did this and it was the best decision. And then now I have all these things. And we miss the opportunity to really hear about this phase. And this is the phase so many of us are in. We've realized a lot of things. We've started listening to different voices. We finally have some confidence in stepping out into something that we think may work. Tell us about where you're at. Tell us about the stage.
Yeah, just to give you an example, we were in Greenville last year. Because one of the things we tried to do, we were in the States for a few months, is we hit as many cities as we could hit. We went Greenville, Nashville, Charleston, New York, DC, Orlando. And everywhere we went, we would find people that were doing cool things. I would look up, best cafes. And I didn't just want great cafes, but guys that were doing local roasting or doing direct trade or whatever. And I wanted people I could meet and I could ask them questions. We did interviews with people all up and down the Eastern Coast. Again, just trying to figure out how they think and how they do things. And for example, we were in Greenville and we were walking up and down the main street and it was all of us, the whole family. And I turned to Tina, and within a 2-block radius, I had like 5 business ideas. Because I would see an empty storefront, or I would see this, or I would see a certain group of people, and I would, mainly from the photography angle, I would be like, oh man, you could start this type of business here. Or, oh wow, you could start this type of business. And it was driving her crazy because she just wanted to shop. Kids just wanted to find the certain popcorn store. And I'm like, all over the place. But for me, what I've realized, what I've identified is that, and I've had certain people tell me, this is what you should do, Jack. You should start this photography business. And the more I look at it, I'm like, it doesn't tap into the depth of who I am. And there are a lot of great ideas because the more you think this way, the more you do see opportunities. I told someone that once. We were walking down the street in Stockholm, and this guy told me, the reasons why things were failing or something. And I said, what's funny is I said, you see what isn't, I see what can be. Because you're telling me how bad this neighborhood is and how run down and how this and that. And I'm actually telling you, it's just amazing. Like all these things that could be done. And if they were done, it would lift up the neighborhood from that. So, but I think for me, it's kind of looking at every idea and saying, is this the kind of thing that if I'm doing it for the next 5 to 10 years, am I really going to be that fully engaged for the next 5 to 10 years? Or am I going to achieve it pretty quick and then be done with it and ready to move on to something else? And that's fine for a side business. But if you're looking at something for a long-term launch, something you want to put the next 10 to 15, 20 years in, if it's not going to do that, then I say just keep it for the side. Maybe later, maybe you start it and someone else runs it or whatever else. But so for me, I've started filtering through the ideas, realizing there's a lot of great ideas, kind of fool's gold, but I'm looking for those big nuggets that change the course of life.
Yeah,
that's kind of, it's funny because I was listening to a podcast earlier with John Acuff. Love his stuff. He just wrote a book called Do Over. And he said, everyone posts a picture of them on the beach saying, this is my office today. Look how epic. And he said, what they don't show you is the Hampton Inn they were staying in the middle of nowhere, Illinois, while they were writing their book. Right next to the highway with bad room service. They never show that. They just show the sexy part with your tan legs and a cocktail and the ocean in the background. And so I think too many times we don't share what it actually is like to actually be processing this stuff and looking at the significant changes. he also brought up a great quote, and I think Stephen Pressfield said it, which is the bigger the story, the bigger the dragon. I think a lot of things just have to change. We're looking at significant change right now, and I think that there's a tendency to say, well, if this is my life work, if this is what I was created to do or destined to do, or ever how you would frame it, it'll just happen. You'll be singing butterflies and pixie dust falling from the sky, and all will be right with the world. And if you ever, you and I are both Disney fans. If you ever watch a Disney movie, maybe that happens at first, but there's always a dragon. The success never comes until they actually face that dragon, or whatever it is. So I think it's also coming to grips with, it's going to be scary. At times it's going to be terrifying, but the greater the fear, the greater the victory. And and Pressfield talks about a lot that, sometimes significant fears are true north. It's that thing that scares you the most.
Wow.
Because I could start a photography business. I could start a wedding photography business for me almost anywhere with very little risk. But I think that's the kind of thing, for me at least, that long term it wouldn't have the kind of traction that I'm wanting. So to me, it'd be a lower risk level, but also it's a shorter reward for me. The stuff I'm looking at is big risk, big dragons, and a longer time to work through it. But I think that also means that the reward will personally be much longer felt, to where, because I don't want to do all this and then a year from now feel totally discontent again.
Right.
That's just, no one wants to do that. No family can keep up with that either.
That's a good point. Yeah,
so I think we owe it to our families and to our own health and our own sanity, and to our clients, whoever who we're working with, to actually give it time to let that idea settle down to that one that's like, that's it. And realizing that for every sexy Instagram photo, there's a bunch of non-sexy Hampton Inn photos out there. No one shows you. So
yeah, that's awesome. So in this stage, working through all of that, what would you say your biggest fear is today?
Biggest fear is today, because I have a family, it'd be financial ruin. It would be that the idea would take too long to get traction. And I think that's, that's probably my number one fear.
Yeah.